The lights of the studio glared with their usual brilliance, washing the set in a soft glow meant to feel welcoming but oddly sterile. The audience clapped on cue, their cheers filling the cavernous space as Ellen DeGeneres stepped onto the stage with her trademark grin, the one America had trusted for nearly 2 decades. She adjusted her blazer, turned toward the crowd, and announced the guest they had all been waiting for. "Ladies and gentlemen, you know her. You love her. Jennifer Aniston." The doors swung open, and Jennifer appeared, poised and radiant, the applause washing over her like a tidal wave. She waved politely, her smile practiced but slightly guarded. To the millions watching at home, it was a scene they had witnessed countless times before. Jennifer and Ellen, Hollywood's inseparable friends, trading jokes, stories, and laughter. But tonight carried an undercurrent, a quiet static in the air, something almost imperceptible until it began to unravel. Jennifer crossed the stage, embraced Ellen with the briefest of hugs, and settled into the guest chair. Ellen leaned back, already grinning, already in control, or so she thought. "Well, well, well," Ellen said, crossing her legs. "Jennifer Aniston, America's sweetheart, back where you belong, on my couch." The crowd chuckled, but Jennifer's expression didn't soften. She smoothed the hem of her dress, lifted her chin, and offered a half-smile that never reached her eyes. "Feels like I've been here 100 times, she replied. "Though sometimes it feels less like an invitation and more like an interrogation." The audience tittered, uncertain whether it was a joke. Ellen laughed, but there was a flicker in her eyes, a sharpness that betrayed annoyance. She leaned forward. "Interrogation? Oh, come on, you love it here." Jennifer tilted her head slightly. "Do I?" The laughter faltered. A ripple of unease moved through the room. Ellen's smile stretched tighter, her grip on the armrest firming, but she refused to let her authority slip. "Of course you do. I mean, let's be honest. Without me, half of Hollywood wouldn't even have a platform. I've been good to you, Jen." The statement hung in the air, bold and barbed, disguised as jest but heavy with implication. The audience laughed again, though the sound was thinner now. Nervous, Jennifer shifted in her seat, her eyes narrowing almost imperceptibly. "You've been entertaining," she said, her voice low but steady. "But good to me? That's debatable." A hush fell over the crowd. Ellen's grin froze. She wasn't accustomed to pushback, not here, not on her stage. She leaned closer, lowering her tone, as though intimacy would soften the blow. "Oh, come on. Don't tell me you're turning on me now. The audience doesn't want to see that." Jennifer's reply cut through the air like glass shattering. "Maybe what the audience wants is the truth." The silence that followed was deafening. A murmur rippled through the crowd, uncertain laughter rising and dying quickly. Ellen forced a laugh, but her eyes darted briefly toward the cameras, toward the producers gesturing frantically off stage. For the first time in her career, Ellen DeGeneres wasn't in control of her own show, and Jennifer Aniston knew it. She leaned back in her chair, the faintest smile tugging at the corner of her lips, a smile not of friendliness, but of quiet defiance. The audience, sensing something monumental, sat on the edge of their seats. They weren't just watching a talk show anymore. They were witnessing the fracture of a friendship, the breaking of an illusion, and the start of a live confrontation that would reverberate far beyond the studio walls. For nearly 2 decades, the story America believed was simple. Ellen DeGeneres and Jennifer Aniston were not just colleagues, but friends. Every time Jennifer appeared on The Ellen Show, the audience was reminded of it. There was the easy banter, the hugs, the playful teasing. It looked genuine, almost sisterly, the kind of friendship that gave comfort to fans who wanted to believe Hollywood's elite could be as warm and human as the characters they played. Clips of Jennifer's first appearance were still replayed in montages. Ellen cracking a joke about Ross and Rachel, Jennifer laughing with a hand over her mouth, eyes sparkling with that familiar sitcom charm. But as the years wore on, the laughter grew thinner, the smiles a little more practiced. Jennifer's body language shifted, her arms folded more often, her glances sharper. To the untrained eye, it was banter. To those paying closer attention, it was tension, dressed in laughter. Behind the scenes, producers whispered. Ellen, known for her dominance over the show's rhythm, often insisted on pre-approved jokes and gags. Guests were expected to play along. Jennifer, however, resisted. More than once, she had refused a prank or rejected a scripted question. She didn't enjoy being cornered into Ellen's humor. One former staffer recalled her words, "I'm not here to be your punchline. If that's what you need, get someone else." On screen, though, none of that was visible. Ellen kept up the act, teasing Jennifer about her relationships, her solitude, even her age. 40 is the new 30, Ellen once quipped, grinning at the audience before adding, "Unless you're Jennifer Aniston." The crowd laughed, but Jennifer's smile was brittle, her eyes glancing momentarily toward the side of the stage as if weighing her exit. Still, she endured it. Year after year, appearance after appearance, Jennifer showed up, sat on the wanted couch, played the game. It was, after all, what Hollywood demanded: reciprocity. Ellen needed A-list guests to maintain her reign. Jennifer needed visibility to keep her brand fresh. Friendship, in this context, wasn't built on affection, it was built on exchange. Yet the illusion held because both women were masters at performing it. Ellen projected kindness, laughter, a charm that masked her hunger for dominance. Jennifer embodied composure, grace, the polite guest who tolerated more than she should have. Together, they created an image millions wanted to believe. Two powerful women, bonded not by contracts or publicity, but by something real. But the cracks were visible to anyone who dared to look closer. Jennifer's laughter often came a beat late, her eyes tightening when Ellen pressed too hard. Ellen, for her part, seemed almost exhilarated by those moments, as if Jennifer's resistance gave her a chance to prove she could still dominate the stage. The illusion of sisterhood was profitable. It made headlines when Jennifer appeared. It boosted ratings when they laughed together. But underneath, it was fragile, strained, and increasingly unsustainable. Ellen once joked on air, "You'll always come back to me, Jen, no matter what." Jennifer had tilted her head, smiled faintly, and replied in a voice softer than the audience could fully catch, "Don't count on it." That moment passed unnoticed by most, but to those who saw it, those who paid attention to the flicker in Jennifer's eyes, the steel in her voice, it was a foreshadowing, a warning that one day she might stop playing along. And when that day came, it wouldn't be quiet. It would be public. It would be seismic. By the time Jennifer walked onto Ellen's stage that night, the empire was already showing cracks. Ellen DeGeneres had spent nearly 20 years cultivating a brand of kindness, a persona built on dance, laughter, and the illusion of warmth. But outside the studio, the narrative was shifting. Headlines questioned her authenticity, former staffers spoke out, and whispers of toxicity echoed louder with every passing week. Inside the industry, people referred to it as the fall of the Queen of Daytime. What had once been an untouchable reign was now riddled with doubts. Stories surfaced of cold encounters, rigid rules, and behind-the-scenes fear. Ellen, who built her empire on projecting inclusivity and generosity, was being painted as a ruler of intimidation. Sponsors quietly reassessed contracts. Networks whispered about exit strategies. Still, Ellen refused to yield. On her stage, in front of cameras, she held her ground. She smiled wider, laughed louder, doubled down on her charm. But the strain was visible. Her jokes carried a sharpness now, her eyes scanning guests for opportunities to reassert control. Every laugh seemed to demand too much effort. Every moment of silence felt like a threat to her dominance. Jennifer's arrival was supposed to be a bomb, a safe choice. Aniston wasn't just any guest. She was Hollywood royalty, a familiar face audiences adored. Having her on the couch meant stability, nostalgia, comfort. It was Ellen's way of reminding the world that she still had power, that the biggest stars still came to her court. But Jennifer wasn't walking into Ellen's kingdom blind. She had heard the rumors. She had spoken to colleagues who described tense backstage encounters, the carefully crafted image that crumbled the moment cameras stopped rolling. And she had lived it herself. The jokes that cut too close, the attempts to turn her into the butt of a narrative she didn't agree to. The set that evening gleamed like a palace, bright lights bouncing off polished surfaces, the audience applauding as if on command. But beneath the applause, the mood was uneasy. It was as though the kingdom itself knew its ruler was losing grip. Ellen greeted Jennifer with her signature smirk, but there was urgency in her tone, a hunger to seize control quickly. She leaned in close, firing questions with a speed that betrayed her nervousness. "So, Jennifer," she said brightly, "you've been keeping busy, haven't you? Or are you just hiding out in Malibu again?" The audience laughed, but Jennifer's expression remained measured, deliberate. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I don't think Malibu needs to be the punchline tonight," she said softly. The room shifted. Ellen chuckled, masking her irritation. "Oh, come on, you know I'm just teasing. That's what we do here. We have fun." But the word fun landed hollow. To those watching closely, it no longer looked like fun. It looked like Ellen trying to reassert her throne, only to find her guest unwilling to kneel. Behind the cameras, producers stiffened. They knew Ellen's reputation wasn't what it once was. Viewers at home were already skeptical, already whispering that the host they loved might not be who she seemed. All it would take was one moment, one misstep, for the facade to fully collapse. And Jennifer, with her calm refusal to bend, was inching them closer to that moment. The kingdom of Ellen wasn't built to withstand rebellion. It was built on compliance, on guests laughing when told to laugh, on audiences cheering when told to cheer. Now, before millions of eyes, the rebellion had begun, subtle, measured, but unmistakable. Ellen's empire was under siege, and the most dangerous part, the challenger wasn't a critic, a journalist, or a disgruntled staffer. It was Jennifer Aniston, the very woman Ellen had counted on to help save her crown. The interview began with the same formula Ellen had relied on for years: light banter, a few teasing remarks about Jennifer's personal life, a joke about Malibu, another about her age. Normally, Jennifer would play along, smile through the discomfort, and let Ellen set the tempo. That was the unspoken contract. Ellen controlled the rhythm. The guest provided the laughter. But something was different this time. Jennifer wasn't interested in playing her assigned role. Ellen leaned back, grinning widely, and said, "You know, Jen, you've been in the spotlight forever. I don't know how you do it. All those relationships, all those tabloids. I mean, how many times have they said you're pregnant now? 10? 20? The audience chuckled, waiting for Jennifer's embarrassed laugh. But instead, she crossed her legs, rested her hands in her lap, and tilted her head just slightly, as if weighing her words with care. "You know, Ellen," she said, her voice calm but edged with steel, "there comes a point where those jokes stop being funny. They're not punchlines. They're parts of my life. My pain, even. And I don't think anyone, even you, gets to turn that into entertainment." The silence was immediate. A ripple of discomfort swept through the audience. The expected laughter never came. Ellen's grin faltered, her eyes narrowing for the briefest moment before she forced out a laugh. "Oh, come on," she said, waving a hand as though brushing the comment aside. "We're just having fun here. That's what my audience loves. Fun." Jennifer didn't flinch. Her eyes locked onto Ellen's with a steadiness that sent a shiver through the room. "Fun at whose expense?" The crowd gasped, and Ellen's smile stiffened. She wasn't used to this. A guest challenging her authority in front of her own audience. She leaned forward, her voice dropping an octave, trying to reassert control. "Jen, you've been on my show a dozen times. You know how this works. We joke, we laugh, everyone leaves happy. That's the deal." Jennifer's reply was soft, almost gentle, but it cut like glass. "Maybe I don't want to make that deal anymore." The weight of the words hung in the air. A few members of the audience clapped nervously, unsure whether to support or stay silent. The producers behind the cameras gestured frantically, trying to signal Ellen to pivot, to change the subject. But Ellen's pride bristled. She wasn't about to let a guest dictate the terms of her own show. She forced another laugh. "Wow, someone's feisty today. Did you forget your coffee this morning?" Jennifer's lips curved into the faintest smile, but there was no warmth in it. "No, Ellen, I just didn't forget my dignity." The room erupted in murmurs, gasps rising from the audience like a wave. Ellen's expression hardened, though she quickly masked it with her trademark smirk. But the mask was cracking, and everyone could see it. Jennifer leaned back in her chair, her posture relaxed, her voice calm. It was Ellen who seemed unsettled now, shifting in her seat, fingers tightening around her cue cards. For years, she had wielded control effortlessly, turning every exchange into a punchline that favored her, but Jennifer had rewritten the rules in a single moment. The audience, sensing the shift, sat in rapt silence. They weren't watching a talk show anymore. They were watching a confrontation, one that felt less like comedy and more like a reckoning. Jennifer's refusal wasn't loud. It wasn't theatrical. It was measured, deliberate, and devastatingly effective. By simply refusing to play along, she stripped Ellen of her most powerful weapon, control. And in that moment, the balance of power on the Ellen show shifted, not with a shout, but with a quiet, undeniable act of defiance. The audience had come expecting laughter, lighthearted games, and the easy charm of daytime television. They had clapped and cheered on cue, trained by years of watching Ellen orchestrate her stage with flawless timing. But as Jennifer's words cut through the room, the rhythm they knew so well began to fracture. At first, the laughter came out of habit. When Jennifer questioned Ellen's jokes, a few chuckled nervously, assuming it was part of the bit. But the humor didn't land. It lingered in the air, hollow, like a laugh track that no longer matched the scene. One by one, the smiles faded. People shifted in their seats, glancing at each other, wondering if they were supposed to laugh or remain silent. Ellen tried to recover, flashing her grin, the one that had carried her through thousands of episodes. She raised her hand to the crowd, coaxing them. "Don't worry, folks. Jen's just giving me a hard time. She loves me. Don't you, Jen?" The audience gave a thin laugh, but Jennifer didn't answer right away. She folded her arms, leaned back, and let the silence breathe. Finally, she spoke, her tone cool. "Love looks a little different than this." The gasp was audible. Ellen's smirk froze in place, and the room tilted on its axis. The audience wasn't sure what they were watching anymore. Was this an argument? Was it real? They had seen awkward moments before on talk shows, but nothing like this. Nothing that felt so raw, so unscripted, so irreversible. A woman in the front row pressed her hand to her mouth, her eyes wide. A man near the back leaned forward, whispering, "Is this part of it?" His companion shook her head. The uncertainty spread like wildfire, every person in the studio realizing they were witnessing something rare, a rupture in real time. Ellen tapped her cue cards against her knee, trying to laugh it off. "Oh, you're killing me here, Jen. Don't make me look bad in front of my people." But the audience didn't laugh this time. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Jennifer's eyes remained locked on Ellen, calm and unwavering, as if daring her to twist the moment into comedy again. Someone coughed. Another shifted uncomfortably in their chair. The producers at the side of the stage gestured frantically to the applause sign, but even as the red lights blinked overhead, the clapping was hesitant, disjointed. The magic of forced enthusiasm had broken. For years, Ellen had thrived on control, the ability to guide the energy of the room, to pull the strings of laughter and applause with invisible ease. But control only worked as long as the audience believed in the illusion. Tonight, that belief was slipping away. Jennifer leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping just enough that the crowd had to lean in. "You don't get to turn me into the butt of your jokes anymore. Not tonight." The words landed like a verdict. A murmur rippled across the audience, not laughter this time, but recognition. The sense that Jennifer had voiced something deeper, something many had suspected, but never said out loud. Ellen forced her grin wider, but it no longer reached her eyes. She glanced toward the cameras, toward the crew, as if searching for rescue, but there was none. The silence of her audience, the very silence she had feared most, hung like a noose around her stage. For the first time, Ellen DeGeneres looked small in her own empire. And for the first time, Jennifer Aniston looked utterly free. The hearing chamber, already charged with tension, seemed to tremble under the sudden silence that followed Jasmine's last words. Reporters leaned forward, pens frozen above their notepads. The hum of cameras subsided into a single clicking staccato, each flash capturing the moment as if it were history being etched in real time. Trump shifted uneasily in his chair. The bravado that had carried him into the room wavered just for a second, his jaw clenched, his hand tapping against the polished oak table like a man desperate to anchor himself. He finally looked up at Jasmine, eyes narrowed. "You think you've got all the answers, don't you?" His voice came out harsher than intended, a crack cutting through the stillness. "But this is a witch hunt, plain and simple. A political stunt." Jasmine didn't flinch. Her voice, calm yet unwavering, cut through the chamber. "No, this is accountability. And accountability is not a witch hunt. It's the foundation of democracy." A murmur rippled through the spectators, some nodding in agreement, others whispering dissent. The judge raised a hand for order, but the tension didn't dissipate. It only pressed heavier on every chest in the room. Trump leaned forward, lowering his voice, but the microphone carried his words. "You've built your whole career on tearing me down. Admit it. This isn't about justice, it's about you." Jasmine's lips curved into the faintest smile, not one of amusement, but of unshaken resolve. She took a measured breath, her fingers resting lightly on the stack of documents before her. "No, Mr. Trump. This is not about me. It's about every voter whose faith was nearly broken, every citizen who wonders if truth still matters. This is about the people you swore to serve." Her words seemed to hang in the air, heavy, immovable. A few gasps echoed from the back of the room. Trump tried to respond, but the rhythm of his voice faltered. He stopped, his gaze flicking toward the gallery, as though searching for support in the faces staring back at him. Yet all he found were eyes demanding answers. Jasmine's voice rose again, sharper this time. "This isn't theater. This is not about headlines or sound bites. It's about whether the rule of law applies equally, whether even a president can be held accountable." The room stilled, so quiet that the distant ticking of the courtroom clock seemed to pound like a drumbeat. Trump slammed his palm against the table, sending a thud reverberating across the chamber. "You don't get it. I made this country strong. I gave people hope. And this is how you repay me?" Jasmine's eyes locked with his, unwavering. "Strength built on lies is not strength. Hope built on deception is not hope. You ask how history will remember you. Maybe it will remember you as a man who believed power placed him above truth. Or maybe—" She paused, her voice softening but no less commanding. "It will remember this as the day you were reminded that power does not erase accountability." The chamber broke into a storm of whispers, some incredulous, others in awe. The judge's gavel struck hard, echoing like thunder, demanding silence. But even in that silence, something had shifted. The courtroom no longer felt like Trump's stage. It belonged, if only for this moment, to Jasmine, to her words, to the raw weight of truth colliding with denial. The courtroom had shifted from heated debate to something far sharper. What began as an exchange of arguments was now escalating into a battle of reputations, where every word seemed to weigh heavier than the last. Cameras flashed from the back, and the air was filled with the faint hum of whispers from reporters who sensed history being made. Jasmine Crockett sat straighter in her chair, her presence commanding the room without her needing to raise her voice. Across from her, Trump's legal team huddled, visibly shaken by how efficiently she had dismantled their earlier claims. Trump himself, restless and visibly irritated, leaned over to his attorneys, whispering instructions that carried the tone of desperation rather than control. His hand slammed once against the polished table and heads turned immediately. Jasmine caught the gesture and tilted her head slightly, a half-smile tugging at her lips. "Is this how the leader of a nation argues? With tantadent?"